It's Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs. Let's start the show with Lewis Tennant. Here we go. Guests and interviews that you're looking for with creators, innovators, and so much more. For all episodes and further info, verbalhighs.com is the place to go.
Welcome to Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs, a podcast podcasted from Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland, New Zealand. Hopefully most of you know this is part two of a unprecedented two-part episode on Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs. As Martin, my gracious guest, we both ran out of time on the first Friday we recorded. It was quite clear to both of us, thankfully, because I am asking guests to donate their time. It was as clear to Martin as to me that we needed to reconvene and pick up where we left off. And both chats ended up about the same length. Actually, owing to the fact that I think we did a fortnight Friday and then a fortnight passed, so we did another Friday morning at the same time, and we both had to get out of there at 10, so it worked out quite well in that we got where we needed to go. God, we got to bloody go on for ages, I reckon. We got where we needed to go. Martin got to where he wanted to go with what he spoke about. If you haven't listened to part one, I strongly suggest going back and listening to that. It's the last episode. You can listen to the standalone and it'll make sense. Although there'll be kind of the first part of his talking about his life and so on missing. And then at the end, we round off with how I started with approaching Martin in the first place, not only because I knew he was one of New Zealand's great chefs and would be generous, I thought a very interesting guest. I'm into food. We don't actually talk a lot about the fact. I did a lot of slow cooking and prep, listening back to these and editing. It seemed quite fitting because that's kind of what I do. I sort of potter in the kitchen while I do other stuff like this. It seemed quite fitting that at the end, the reason I initially reached out to Martin, as I mentioned at the beginning of part one of this conversation, is he wrote a really great obituary for his best friend Nick Ryan and my friend Nick Ryan, who, as I talked to Martin about at the end of the set, I've actually known since I was blooming first year at uni, and he was first year into the full-time workforce as far as I remember. We're both hotel porters at the airport hotel in Kilburnie, and we're up in contact with each other, on and off. You know how it goes, folks. Decades long of knowing someone, but we last saw each other as recently as going into the first lockdown a few years ago. It was sort of good to round off chatting and remembering Nick and having a bit of a laugh along the way. Like the show, Verbal Highs podcast on Facebook, Verbal Highs on Twitter. Follow, subscribe, do whatever you do on your podcast app. If you are on Apple Podcasts, it's really helpful if you leave a comment and a star rating, 5 or 4. And if you are new here and Martin's brought you here, or maybe Nick or whatever, if you're new in general, there's obviously, this is episode 129, so there's 128 other episodes going back about 5-6 years. They are, for the most part, what we call in the biz evergreen, which means that, you can go back and listen to one from 5 years ago, and I would hope that it would be interesting and relevant still, and we're not kind of doing week by week political punditry or anything like that. All right. Thank you again, Martin.
This is Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs.
Is it like a Space Invaders machine behind you?
Yeah, it is.
Old school.
Yeah.
Fucking brilliant. I love it.
But if you want to get sort of nerdy and collector about it,
yeah.
it's like, I just thought of a really good analogy. You know how people like buy old classic cars and they put new modern equipment in them just to make them safer or whatever? Well, in this case, it's got like a little kind of mini computer chippy thing that's got 18 games instead of the one board. So what I'm getting at is if you were like a nerdy, really nerdy collector, and you wanted an original Pac-Man or whatever, an original Pac-Man would mean that large board that only is programmed to make Pac-Man, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yes, it is, and it's like...
that is wild.
Yeah, it's, I mean, if anything, it's a nice backdrop in your video, right?
Yeah, fuck yeah. It reminds me, Nick, Nick Ryan, our dear departed friend, was a huge Seinfeld fan, right?
Yeah.
Massive Seinfeld fan. And an encyclopedic knowledge of Seinfeld. And he was always asking me, like, stay, watch some Seinfeld. I never watched Seinfeld. But I was always working when it was on, so I never kind of got the whole Seinfeld thing. And then a few months ago, it popped up on my Netflix feed, all the old Seinfeld episodes. And I was sort of feeling a bit down about it. So I thought, about Nick. So I thought, you know what, I'll do it. For Nick, I'll watch a couple of episodes of Seinfeld. I was addicted to it, right? I was binge watching Seinfeld. I was binge watching it. And I realised, just as an aside, I realised why Nick wanted me to watch Seinfeld with him, because he saw in George and Seinfeld, him and I. And I was like, that's why he was so keen. Like, he's George and I'm Seinfeld.
Really? Wasn't it?
It was extraordinary, man. It was like this light bulb moment for me when that's what it was. Like, he was... Anyway, one of those Seinfeld episodes is George finds his old Space Invaders machine in the shop, and he's still got the high score, but the shop's closing down, so he wants to take the machine. Have you seen this episode? And it's
it rings a bell. Yeah,
he's got to unplug it to get it out of the store.
The Frogger. Yeah. Absolutely. We've never had I've never done a two-parter, and also it's sort of odd having a gap of a week. Maybe you've been reflecting on that first part of your life because you talked about it, for...
Yeah, I think I was reflecting on it because I was surprised I talked about it so much, but also so openly about it. So that's not normally me,
Welcome to the show.
Sort of felt like I just been through a counselling session. My name's Martin, and I've got a few things to share.
Yeah.
And I think I thought, when I got off, I thought, I think I may have just talked a little bit too much if he's now got to do a two-parter out of this. But I was amazed. I think so I reflected back on literally just how much stuff I've told you, and how much I guess I've kind of revealed as well.
When did the place down on the bay wind on up? That went for quite a few years, didn't it?
13 years it ran for. Yeah, 13 years, and I could see the market changing. Like, fine dining wasn't so much going, but it was we were going to start struggling. The long lunches were disappearing. I had this huge long bar that 10 years prior. 14 years, sorry, like every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, there was 30, 40 guys out. Like, no one sat down to lunch until about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and PAs and secretaries would bring work down for these guys to sign while they were having lunch, and, the whole liquid lunch thing was going, and it was just, and they were becoming less and less and less. I had these huge, big round tables because we used to sit big groups of people all the time, like 6s and 8s.
Yeah.
And now I had 2s and 4s, and I had these massive tables, So I really needed, we needed to change. We needed to change fast. One of the things I did was, weirdly, was I got rid of all the tabletops one weekend. I said, these are all too big. I need smaller tables.
Yeah.
So I replaced the tabletops with smaller tables. Basically just marine ply, right? Cut a few tabletops. That's why fine dining restaurants have white tablecloths on, because the tabletop underneath is just a plank of wood. So I'd gone to my landlords and I said, look, I need to change. I need to adapt. Things are moving. I've got some ideas as to the direction I want to go, but I've only got 2 years left on my lease, and it wasn't just a renewal; it was a complete redo.
And so where are we now? Like mid 2000s?
No. We are about 7, 8, 9 years ago. So what are we now? 20? I suppose 2012 around then.
So as a quick aside, I know that's not the main point you're making, but I'm surprised to hear that the liquid lunch still existed. We get told that that's a 80s and 90s phenomena, but you're talking about.
We were still going,
people whooping it up, and I suppose that's like a speakeasy there. You don't know what's going on in there when you go past, do you?
Well, that was the thing, right? When you went past that building, I mean, because like all recreational clubs, because it's a yacht club, right? So it's a recreational club, like a sport, like a rugby club. The back, in terms of the front of the building faces the arena.
Yeah.
Right. So in the yacht club, the front of the building was facing the ocean. Right. Right. That was the arena, right? Was the harbour.
Yeah.
The back of the building was what faced the street, and the yacht club was unusual in the fact that Oriental Parade was the back of our building was on Oriental Parade. So it was the back of a building. It was this big, long wooden wall with no windows in it, so you couldn't see in.
No, never. Yeah, like a casino. I've never thought about this till now, but never knew what was going on at that place.
No idea what was going inside, right?
Yeah.
And so consequently, when you were inside as well, you had no idea what was going outside on the street. You didn't see the traffic. You didn't know it was rush hour, because all that was in front of you was this expansive harbour and yachts bobbing up and down, and time would go by. It was like a vortex. Once you got in there, it was hard to get out of. Anyway, so I've gone to the club and I said, look, but I'm not going to invest the kind of money I need to invest unless I know that I've got a lease. So why don't we start working on a new lease now? I want to renew. I think I've been a good tenant. I know you want to review your options, but let's get that underway. And the problem with the yacht club is that you end up with it's a club, right? So you get a committee. So every year a new committee, every year basically a new landlord. And that particular year and the year after, I didn't have great landlords. It was a difficult situation with the manager of the club and the committee that I faced. didn't quite understand what business was all about. Hearts were in the right places, but the heads weren't.
Right. Yeah.
And it was a real struggle. So we battled on it for a couple of years, and then and really I couldn't get any closer to getting a definitive answer as to whether they were going to renew my lease or not. Right, and it was getting, March 31 was the end of my lease. Right, and it was getting late, January, and I needed to know what's happening. We had weddings booked, I had gift vouchers out there.
Right,
it was like we can't literally take any bookings beyond March 31 because I don't know what's happening at this point. Right, so I kept pressuring them for an answer and going, I need to know. And then I'll never forget it. It was early Feb, just before Valentine's Day, I think. It seems to be a significant day for me these days. And I said, look, I said, this is a real simple question. I just need a yes or no answer. Are you going to renew my lease? And we've been through a whole lot of stuff already about this, with proposals and things that I put in front of them. And they just came back and said no. And I said, well, like no's no. And they said, no, we want to review our options, and we want to put it out to the market to see what's out there. And I said, well, that was 6 months ago that you should have been doing that, like not as at the end of my lease. Like, what do I do? And they said, well, the end of the lease is the end of the lease. You'll have to leave.
Oh, my God. No goodwill there. No institutional history. No relationship history.
Out the window, mate.
Yeah. Before all of that, like, what did the yacht club get out of you being there? Please don't take the way I phrased that the wrong way. Like, because do they still have somewhere for their old dogs to go and have a drink? And I suppose it's not that sort of yacht club. It's sort of moneyed up people, isn't it? So yeah,
it was that. But
yeah,
and they wanted the members to still be able to use us as a bar and stuff. And
so is the short answer they got rent out of you? They got revenue for their trust.
When I took over the lease, right. When I took over the lease, it was open to members only.
Yeah,
it was Monday to Friday lunch with the occasional wedding. So you had to be a member of the club to dine there, and my rent was $46,000 a year. Right.
Yeah.
Within a couple of years, we were open to the general public because demand, as I said before, demand was so great that we needed to open to the general public.
Yeah.
So that changed the dynamic. When I closed 13 years later, my rent was $126,000.
Yeah. Right.
Right. And they wanted to put it up.
Milk it.
Right. So the club had done extremely well out of us financially by being open to the public, but also we brought a lot of really positive. We were a positive influence.
It seems they forgot that at the beginning they were members of the coolest club in town,
That's
such
right.
for them.
Yeah, and I think a lot of members felt that they were a member of the Royal Port Nicholson Yacht Club, right?
Yeah.
But they would hear on the street that was Martin Bosley's restaurant. The Royal Charter was proudly displayed on the wall next to a sign that said Martin Bosley's. And so there was always this element of this friction of like going, of the landlord-tenant relationship. I was well aware of how it worked. In fact, we used to promote that more than they did. In fact, I was just saying, like, you're not making enough of this. In terms of your membership drives, we're one of the biggest assets you've got. Right? Because not everybody needs to be into yachting to be a member here. You don't have to be on a crew or own a yacht. In fact, as a lot of sports clubs found over the years, membership was falling.
Well, hello, RSAs and
they were struggling.
RSAs and RSLs. The reason that's fresh in my mind is I was in Whangamata recently, and if they hadn't got two covers in, me and my mate who didn't fight in the war, nor did, as I know, either our grandfathers, they wouldn't be a viable business. So they know what they need to do. Yeah. You need
to open it up, right?
Yeah.
And I was to say, like, we're bringing them in. It's now up to you to capture them as members. Right?
Yeah.
They wouldn't even give me membership application forms to put out with people's accounts at the end of the day, at the end of lunch or dinner. I'm like, this is a no-brainer for you. With every invoice, with every bill that goes out, here goes a membership application form for the club.
That's a sort of a delicate dance you're doing of power dynamics.
Constantly. It was a constant struggle. It was a constant battle, and then it was. It was always difficult, and it was energy draining, Lewis. It was just like sometimes you'd feel mentally defeated because of some of the meetings you would have had with these clowns, and go just not get it. And it wasn't always like I wasn't always they accused it of being a one-way street. I was like, I'm trying to make this work for both of us here. But I don't want to go. Why would you want me to go? There's a few other operations that are going to come here and pay you this kind of money and be the good tenant that we were. When I closed, they owed me money. It wasn't like a case of, it wasn't because when I closed, the rent was still paid up for the following month. They were like, "You got to go." I'm like, "No, I don't. I've got a month. I've still got a month here. 2 weeks, I think. So I think it was still to be there." It was really acrimonious at the end. It was just awful. It was a horrible way to end 13 years. And so I rang my accountant and lawyer after they'd said we're not going to renew your lease. And I'll never forget it because it was a Friday afternoon.
Right.
And we were heading to Hawke's Bay to do a catering gig.
Yeah.
And I said, I had my crew with me, right? We're going, I had this thing on my mind that I'd just been told they weren't going to renew the lease. And my lawyer said, well, he said, come April. He said, come March. He said, how are you going to pay February's bills? And I said, well, I don't know. You know, like restaurants are, as you know, mate, they tend to be week to week or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
And also we just had one of the busiest Christmases we'd ever had. So there was a tax bill that was that was coming as a result of that. And they just said, well, if you don't know how you're going to pay your bills, you'll be trading fraudulently, and that's breaking the law. You can go to jail for that sort of behaviour. Yeah. So you have to close. And I said, well, when? And they said, immediately. They said, like, you can't continue trading. And they said, because it's Friday, they said, you'll get through the weekend. Don't buy anything. Don't get any more product in because you know you're going to be closing. And I was devastated. I spent the weekend going, this can't be right. This must be wrong, right? So we drove back from this gig on the Sunday, and on the Monday morning, I got a phone call from the lawyer and the accountant, going, right, the liquidators are flying down from Auckland. We found some Auckland guys who are going to come down. They get in at 9 o'clock. So I met them at the restaurant, and I said, how does this work? And my world was just spinning, man. I was like, what is going on here? I'm in this restaurant, I'm there by myself. And
it's all happened so quickly.
Friday I've got a restaurant. Sunday I'm doing, Saturday night I'm doing a gig in Hawke's Bay. It's amazing. It's fabulous. We're the absolute darlings of the whole thing. Back in my mind, I'm going, I don't have a restaurant anymore. Like, how does this unfold? I signed a bit of paper on that Monday morning about 9:30. The restaurant was no longer mine. That said I was now in liquidation. And so I'll never forget, as they said, you need to call all your staff in for a staff meeting as well. So we've done all that. I said, you need to get here for 10 o'clock on Monday morning. They all thought we'd won an award. These are people I've worked with for 20 plus years, some of them. Yeah. 11 years, like the long-term employees, they were friends who had, two of them have been away on this catering gig where they hadn't been able to talk to them about it, about what was going on. Because you're not allowed to do that. That's, again, it's all part of the rules. You can't talk about it until it's done, in case people sort of try and get money out of you before you liquidate. Yeah, right. And so I called all the crew in, and I couldn't even speak, mate. I was just sobbing. Oh, bro. That this was the Martin Bosley's was no more, and as of that morning, as of that moment, they were no longer employed by me. And they were all hugging each other and crying and just whatever. And the liquidator said, unfortunately, you've got 30 minutes to get your possessions together. And it was so, mate, it's so cold and brutal, And he goes, and he was a lovely guy, the liquidator. And he said, I've never seen anything like this. He said, I've been liquidating business for years. He said, I've never seen anything like this. This is crazy.
Was it such a steam? Like, was it so quick? Was this instigated by the people from the yacht club? Or is it just people? Right.
Yeah. I don't.
But you. Sorry, we don't really need to get into the weeds on this. But I thought you said it ended up they owed you money. So why are they worried about? This is down the track. Yeah.
Yeah. No. They owed me money, like for events and things that we'd done that they hadn't paid me for. And that's just, we had money in the bank. The business wasn't broke. We had money. We had money in the bank. All the staff got paid. They all got their holiday pay. So the liquidators went, this is weird. Like, we just normally get called into business because it's on its knees, it's on its ass. That wasn't the case here. This was purely a case of vindictiveness. Vindictiveness, right? Yeah. When the liquidators went upstairs to the management offices and got the chief executive down down to tell him that we were now in liquidation and the restaurant was closed, he was stunned. And he came and he said, "What?" And I said, "Dean," I said, "What did you expect?" I said, "Like, why are you so surprised?" I said, "Like, this was always going to happen with the course of action you guys took. This was the inevitable outcome. I can't believe you're sitting here stunned." And he was like, "What am I going to tell the members?" And I said, "I thought the members knew about this, mate, the executive, right?" And he said, "No, they've been acting as he and the business guy have been acting basically as a couple of rogue elements, thinking that they were going to go."
This is like a movie plot, man.
It was unbelievable,
honestly.
So then, of course, the president of the club and they're on the phone going, what's going on, boss? Like, what's happening? And I said, well, you're not renewing my lease. They're like, what do you mean we're not renewing your lease? I said, well, your chief executive has made this decision and told me I'm not being renewed. So I said, so they were horrified, right? But anyway, but the big thing was, so he went up, the business manager for the club, he came into the restaurant, mate, and he was laughing. And I'm like looking around and I'm going, there are staff here heartbroken. I'm heartbroken. There are people crying everywhere. And he's sitting there going, ha, 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 ha. He felt like he'd won a victory.
Right.
That place sat empty for the next year and a half. So they've got no rent. Everybody involved apart from one lost their jobs. You know, it was just it was the dumbest, most extraordinary, and I was reeling, and it was a really public downfall.
Well, that was my next question was the two things, like literally your name's on the tin. So you've got, first thing is the media, like how it's reported, and then good old Wellington, there's also the word on the street, right? So
yeah. So my crew go out, they all go to the pub.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know where they went, right? And they're all sitting there and people are like, hey guys, what's going on? And they go, Bosley's just no more, he's just closed the doors, we're all out of work, right? So word went through the industry on a Monday morning, like you can't imagine, right? Incidentally, they all found work within a week. Not one of them was unemployed for a week, right? They all went straight into new jobs, right? You know, and some of them went on to open their own restaurants and have done spectacularly well as a result. So, you know, there was a lot of benefits, a lot of good things came out of this.
One door closes.
But immediately, TV were on the phone. The Dominion Post were at the door, you know, on the phone. I gave one interview. That was the Dominion Post. I said, that's it. Radio New Zealand were calling. The Herald. It was on the front page of the Herald. You know, people in Auckland going, mate, what's going on? I'm like, you know, it was incredibly public. But I've been advised by somebody in PR who said, just say nothing, right? You'll be emotional. You'll say dumb stuff. You'll be doing them you think, you know, they've been incredibly good to you and kind to you over the years, so you owe them an explanation. You owe them the story, which is exactly where my mindset was at. It was like, these guys have been amazing for me, you know, in terms of publicity and, you know, being a friendly media towards me. I owe them a good story. I owe them an explanation here. But I remember what Glenda had said, which is just say nothing. And she said, you know, they'll want a story, but as soon as they realize they're not going to get one, they'll move on to the next story, right? Because the editor's going, there's a story. No, go get the next one. And that's exactly what happened. So within 2 or 3 days, it was gone off the page. It was gone. So, but everybody knew. And even now, like this is over 10 years ago now, just over 10 years. People still talk about it, want to talk about it.
Yeah.
How terrible it was, you know. And even like I just saw a guy in Courtney Place yesterday who said, mate, he said, you've had some tough times, but it's good to see kind of, you know, what you're doing now and all these things. I'm like, those tough times were 10 years ago. You know, I worked really hard. And then, mate, you know, for the next 3 years after that, it was fucking head down, ass up, because the tax department wrote a lot of money.
You're answering the next question. I was going to say, right. Do you go home and shut the blinds for a year and play PlayStation, or do you just smash on through it, working and stuff? Well, you already answered it, so you just go ahead to get on with it.
I wanted to. I wanted to go home and close the blinds and not get out of bed. But I had a daughter who was at school.
Oh boy!
I had to tell. She was 16. I had to say, look, you know, this thing's happened. I don't want you to worry about it, but you may get a hard time at school about it. If that happens, you've got to let me know, right? She said, thanks, Dad. She went to school. Nothing bad happened. All she had was people coming up to her all day going, hey, we're really sorry to hear about what's happened with your dad.
Oh, nice.
That was fine. But in addition to the restaurant, you know, I was a co-owner of the Wellington City Market, which was every Sunday. So Tuesday, my life is shit. But coming up on the Sunday, I've got this farmers market to open and get going on a Sunday morning. I had to be there. I couldn't hide. And Rachel Tolley, dear friend and business partner, she came to my place on the Tuesday or the Wednesday. She said, "What are you doing?" Mate, I didn't want to get out of bed. I want to put my feet on the floor, you know.
Yeah.
And she said, "You're coming to work." I was like, "I don't have a work anymore, Rach. You know, I don't even know what to do. You know, I'm not. The phone's ringing, but it's people wanting gossip." And she said, "No, you're coming to work." So she had an office on Origin Parade right opposite the restaurant, underneath where Nick later moved into. And I went in there that day, and I stood there, and I was like, I just stood there like a spear, you know, like an idiot, really. And she got in the car and she drove off. Mate, it was awesome. She went to Freedom Furniture and she bought a desk, and she came back and she assembled it in front of me on the floor. Did a terrible job of putting this desk together. It was wobbly.
It's like Homer Simpson's barbecue.
Yeah, it was wobbly for years after. You know, you didn't wobble too much. And she said, "That's your desk." that's where and it was probably one of the kindest and the best thing that happened to me was just like, you cannot wallow, you cannot hide, you've got to come to work. That you've got to. So it gave me a reason everyone wanted to get out of it, even though at that stage I had nothing to do. Right, I got out of bed and I got in the car and I drove to work and I sat there.
They give you a little prep area on your office desk. Yeah. Oh, well, what's he going to do? Exactly. We'll give him some onions today. We'll do something.
Yeah. The phone started ringing, work started coming in, inquiries started coming in. That Sunday, I was down at the farmers market, getting the market open, and people were coming going, "You were here?" I'm like, "Yep." And I'm like, "That's amazing! Like what you've gone through this week. You were here, really brave of you." I'm like, "Man, I had no choice. One is I had to get this business up and running. Number two, I had no income.
Yeah.
I just, and as restaurants basically, people who own restaurants basically just guaranteeing themselves a wage or a salary. Yeah. Right. And a lot of the time, it's week to week or month to month.
Yeah.
So suddenly I had no source of income anymore. So, I had to. The market was now going to be what paid the rent. Right. Whatever I earned. So I had to sell a lot of bacon sandwiches to be able to put food on the table and make sure my daughter could go to school.
Good margin on a bacon sandwich, though.
Do you know those? I thought, why did I not do this years prior? Because it was so, in fact, a couple of years later, Isabella came running home and she said, "Oh my God, Dad," she said, "this movie, I've seen the shorts of this movie, it's called Chef." And I said, "Yeah." She said, "It's you and me," because I was a solo dad, right, single parent.
Oh, I remember that film. That was a lovely film.
Yeah, she goes, "It's us." It's the guy even looks like you, John Favreau. She goes, "He even looks like you." And I used to have this sort of peach-coloured or orange-peach-coloured polo shirt that I wear. And she said, "He even wears the same clothes as you." This guy, right? And so he's got a fine dining restaurant. I was notorious for putting out tweets that would get me in the shit with people. I was really opinionated, putting tweets out there like, "Bloody hell, rah, rah, rah." Just as putting out an opinion like a puff of smoke into the social media world.
No voice of the PR person in your mind, obviously.
I'd just say something. Would go out there. Yeah. Remember Rach going, "You just like filter that shit, like stop it," right? It was just, you forget who you are and that people listen to what you've got to say. Because I always be surprised when something would blow up, right?
Yeah.
And in this movie, he puts out a tweet about a restaurant critic, which I'd also done. And he gets fired, loses his restaurant, the whole thing. And his road to Damascus or redemption or whatever you want to say was through the Cubano sandwich. His Cubano was my bacon and egg, and it was so strange.
Wow.
The similarity. So she said, "We've got to go watch it." So we went and watched it on Father's Day. It was hilarious.
And also that's interesting. I love that with the screenplay. Like, so whoever wrote that kind of got the nuance of that whole scene, that whole thing they were writing about. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, there's few chef movies that you go to watch as a chef and go, "Oh, that's just exactly what it's like."
I'll tell you, if it hadn't come up, I wouldn't have mentioned it, but I reckon over the next few months, if it's not happened already, people are going to start telling you to watch a TV show called The Bear. And I'm not saying it's because it's about you. No, I'm saying that it's a very much, these people know about kitchens, whoever filmed it, whoever the DOPs are.
I've read about this, but I haven't found out which platform it's going to be on yet. But it's.
I'll see if I can. I'll see if I can do something. Upload the old. Give it to you. We can figure something out.
I've read about this. But anyway, so it was kind of like I had to be there. I had to earn this money. I was turning white bread and soft spread butter and bacon into dollars every week. And but it was crazy, man. Like people would come out, and this is a $6 sandwich, $8 with an egg in it, right? But people would go, "These sandwiches they're amazing." I was making my own brown sauce that would go on it. It was the bacon sandwich was to sell the brown sauce basically, but the bacon sandwiches became bigger than the sauce. But people would go, the kids every Sunday they're like, "We've got to go and get a bacon sandwich, that sauce." So I'd say, that was the thing. But it was $8 with an egg, right, and $6 without. And I'd get people coming on those first few Sundays afterwards going, "I'll have a bacon and egg sandwich." I go, "That's $8." And they go, "Great." And they give me 20. And I go, to give them change, they'd be like, no.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is like around 2015, right? That's cheap. Isn't that cheap for a bacon sarnie?
It was. But I was making good money on it.
But you plate that, and it's at a brunch at a cafe. It's a $25 sandwich, isn't it?
$25 sandwich. But this is three rashers of really good free range bacon.
Oh boy.
And a free range egg. I mean, it was all, but it was on $1.25 loaf of plastic white sandwich bread, the only bread to have if you're going to have a bacon.
No, absolutely, absolutely. That was a penny drop for me. Like, only relatively recently, I realised like how much of a range there is between not that great bacon and frickin' amazing bacon.
Frickin' amazing bacon. Yeah. No, it's just good bacon. And so part of the key to it was people would go, why is this sandwich so good? I go, the bacon is really good bacon. That was a big part of it, and it was tasty eggs. But it would cost me $120 in food cost every Sunday, and I turned that $120 into $1,000, and I went to labour.
And so that's enough to keep the liquidators at bay.
Well, no, it kept the wolf from the door at home.
Yeah, great.
Right, and initially the liquidators said they did everything they could, and they said, right, that's it, done, we're out, and the arrangements were put in place to pay people back that they had to pay people back. And that was fairly sizable, because they had this huge tax bill. The tax department weren't kind. When we went to them to cut a deal, they said, no, you're a high-profile restaurant and we want to make an example. They actually said, we want to make an example of you to others. So no deals, which was terrible. And so I had this massive tax bill. And I said to my accountant, and everything had gone right. I'd lost everything. Everything had been taken. I said, how do I deal with this? And they said, you're just going to have to work hard. So literally, mate, for the next three and a half years, it was head that it was a $200 job, I took it. It was a $2,000 job, I took it, because it was, it was money off that tax bill. And of course, then you start generating income, so you start earning, have to pay fucking more tax again. So it becomes this vicious circle. And then one day, the accountant rang up and he said, well done. He said, that's your last tax payment.
Wow, it's like the student loan you never think's going to get paid off.
It was never think back, but this is like over 150 grand worth of tax.
Sure,
it was huge. It was massive.
Did they add those fines? I think that's really unfair. I've had friends get into these situations where the logic is completely flawed to me. It's like, I'm trying to get you this money. Why are you adding to that?
They're a government-backed mafia. Right, they're the only ones that are allowed to charge.
Well, they say there's two things sure in life: are death and taxes. Yeah.
Well, they're the only they're legally allowed to charge you compound interest. So you start out with it's not like it's accrued interest per annum. It's like the interest is attached to the previous month's account, right? So it just starts to grow exponentially, out of control. So I started out with a $70,000 tax bill that became over 150 grand because of penalties and interest. And when we said and even the liquidator said he's in liquidation, he can't actually pay. You need to put a stop on the penalty on the interest here, because he's actually unable to do it. Right? And they were like, no, you should have thought of that before he closed the doors. It was like I had no choice. They wouldn't listen. Anyway, that was all in the past, really.
So how far is it? Three. I always like time stamping things. So we must be at about 2018 now, or 2019, or.
So that was 5 years ago, mate. I paid that off. So
that's recently in the scheme of things. It all shut. So all of this has happened. I find the older I've got, the relative time seems shorter. So to me, all of this didn't happen that long ago in the scheme of things, even though you might say it was 10 years ago. So the inevitable question is, in terms of, none of this has sounded, the way that you were told to handle it, which worked and did all those great things, doesn't sound great from a mental health perspective in terms of, did you come out of it the other end okay? Because surely once you actually put down the bacon sandwiches and everything, it's got to, there's going to be. We didn't used to talk like this. This is a new thing. I mean, the world, Yeah.
I became an alcoholic.
Right.
And so I guess that's another part of my life journey was that I've been sober now for nearly 3 years.
Great, man.
Because I didn't address any of those things.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've learned through extensive counselling, both through alcohol counselling and then the PTSD counselling after the accident, is that I've celebrated. I've been really good at celebrating my wins, really good at celebrating wins, but I've never dealt with any of my losses. And so I've got a really unique way of dealing with losses or chaos in my life, which is of finding the way in a drawer and putting that drawer away in a part of my brain and going, I'll worry about that later, or I'll deal with that later, and never doing so. But it never goes away, right? It's just always still sitting there. So I didn't. I think I was already well on my way to becoming a high functioning alcoholic, but certainly after that, cemented my position as a high functioning alcoholic. One who hated getting drunk, incidentally. Like I hate the feeling of being drunk.
Hey, the first really interesting part about that first, how you explain that, and it makes complete sense. None of that's an abstraction. Yeah, but the flip side of that is, perversely, is like I had wondered how you just go next thing, like you talked about when you got to Australia and stuff. Like the thing to deal with there in terms of reconciling it is it's kind of the secret to your success back then as well. Mm. Do you know what I mean? Like, because if I'm someone who overthinks things going wrong, and that's to my detriment, right? And that causes, humans, we've all got our shit, right? So I'd be the other way around there. Like that would be to me, that's how you go. Well, this happened in Wellington, then I moved there, and like you had this remarkable resilience, but it turns out it's not actually resilience because of all the reasons you just laid out. Yeah.
I think it was just always like...
It comes back to that word of balance, right? Balance, Yeah.
Balance, yeah. But I think I was just always, get up and keep moving forward.
Yeah.
And put the past behind you, keep moving forward. And so people at the market, when I close the restaurant, I go, it's amazing you're here. And I used to think, like, what else would I be doing? Now I know what I should be doing, which is like, I should be like dealing with it.
Yeah.
And you see, like, maybe I should have taken a year off with the blinds closed, play PlayStation.
No one should do that. No one should do that.
But do something just to process.
Yeah.
Just like deal and go, you know what? I can't deal with anything else right now. I've just had my heart and soul ripped away from me. 13 years of my life. That my pride and joy. Building a restaurant that had my name on it. I mean, when I closed that restaurant, mate, I was like, what do I do? Like, it was me and I was it.
Yeah.
I don't want to. How do I? What? I realised that I was defined by that restaurant.
Yeah.
Now the restaurant was gone. What was my reason? I had no reason anymore.
Well, your name was literally attached to it. Yeah.
And it was everywhere. And it was just, and because of that, I think it was, the name became bigger. I mean, I used to get surprised at how big the name was, or where the name would take me. I'm like, I was still the boy from Company Coast. It was, to me, it was never about seeking the attention or the. I hate that word celebrity, but it's there. Or seeking that celebrity thing. It just kind of came along, and I just saw celebrity as being another way to put bums on seats. Yeah,
you're right. That's the approach. You can either earn it, which is the old school way of doing it, or you can strive for it, which is the sort of insta way to do it, right?
Yeah. So I think, it came through hard work, and we worked, when we got it, we worked hard at it, we worked harder at it, it was because, the more attention we got, the harder we had to work to justify the attention. So we kind of became a sort of Damocles in some respects. But
what about things like the cookbooks and are they sort of things that started happening after this time, or have you been doing all that stuff for years? Like I noticed you have done a bunch of media stuff over the years, and was that a thread all the way through, or is this something that came once you could get away from the restaurant and you had time to look at other stuff?
Yeah, no, that happened while I was at the restaurant. So my former business partner and I, we'd gone to France actually on his honeymoon. My ex-wife and I went with him and his new bride on like a food tour of France, basically, which I guess in a way was the honeymoon was Gav and I having a honeymoon, and our and our wives kind of tagged along, and we sort of dined at all these Michelin star restaurants, and I just wrote up this little journal, like every night we get back to room, and I just write up a little thing about our experience. And when I got back, I tied it up and knocked it up into something that was kind of readable beyond the scrawls of the notes. And I sent it through to Gav, and I called it 9 stars in 3 days, because we've done 9 Michelin stars in 3 days.
Okay, yep, that would have been totally lost on me.
Yeah, and he passed it on to somebody else, and and in the way that these things are like an overnight success. About 3 or 4 years later, this thing landed on the desk of the editor of Kyoto magazine, New Zealand's In-Flight magazine, and she rang me up and she said, I've just read 9 stars in 3 days. And I went, oh God, I forgot all about that. I said, oh God, sorry, because there's a little bit of profanity in there. And I said, I'm sorry about like these words like fucking delicious, and she said, I really like the way you write, I really like your voice, and I want you to write for Kyoto, would you do it? And I was like, oh, I don't know. So like a monthly column, and she's like, yep, just 700 words, talk about food. And I went, okay, done. So I did it. Sent the first one off. I did that for 11 years. So for 11 years I became the food, I did a monthly column to Kia Ora. And then about halfway through that, Lois Day left the Listener after 25 years. And I got a call from Pamela Sterling, who was editor at the Listener, saying, we'd like you to take over where Lois left off. Well, that was huge, man. Taking over from Lois Day, she's this national icon,
in the Listener.
Food writing.
Iconic.
In the Listener. So it was iconic, and it was like, this has got to be serious for the column. This can't just be, look what I did with my asparagus. It was a little bit more, had to be a bit more about that. And, so I said yes. So I took that on. I did that for 5 years. At the same time I was doing Kia Ora. So I was at the restaurant. I had these 2 columns that I was writing. And I'm not a natural. I failed School C English, so I'm not a natural writing. I struggle over. I hate being edited as well, right? So I struggle over everything that I write. Even to this day, I analyse. For a while there, at the Listener, they used to call me the king of the semicolon because I used to use it so often. In the writing, some editors used to hate it. And then, then the Listener put out my first cookbook of collected recipes, and that went really, really well. And then Random, who'd published that, came to me and said, and I'd also along the way we'd won Restaurant of the Year, Cuisine Restaurant of the Year. We've got 3 hats, and that Random came to me and said, we'd like you to write the big coffee table book, the beautiful cookbook. No one in New Zealand had done that at that stage.
When's this? Where are we here?
2013, I think.
Okay.
It would have been around, maybe 2013, maybe a little bit before that, I think, around then. And so I agreed to do that. That was a 2-year process, writing that book, the big book, which is the big white book with the red streak down the front. And with Jane Usher coming down, so she was the photographer that did all my Listener work, and she did the book work as well. And it was a 2-year exercise. It was massive. And I said at the end of it, I said, I'll never write another book again. I've done another one since then.
Yeah.
And I started working on another one a couple of years ago, but I'm only sort of part way through it. Whether I finish it or not, I don't know. And so I got rid of Kia Ora, stopped writing for the Listener because things I need to get stuff out of my life and get some sense order back into it. So now I've just got my column in Cuisine magazine, which I love that, really enjoy that. A little bit of freelance writing here and there for other magazines every now and again, contributing recipes to various publications, but it's kind of easy. I do, national radio with Wallace Chapman and Jesse Mulligan once a month, giving out a recipe or do the panel, and so it's now manageable, and I still enjoy the act, the process. I wouldn't say the act. I enjoy the process of writing. It just takes me a really long time to get there.
Yeah.
Like I think about my storyline for weeks about what's my intro, what's my outro, like how do I draw someone into a column about whitebait, that makes it interesting reading, where I can also work in. I figured out that people like to learn 3 things, right, from a column. So how do you put 3 facts in about whitebait, for instance, that aren't, point 1, point 2, point 3? That when
they don't have legs. Okay, there's one.
Yeah, that's right. People go, you don't fillet them. You can't have them.
Yeah, that's right. Where you can buy a knife this size. Sorry, anyway, go on.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so it's just, I'm always sort of thinking along those lines. And I'm really lucky that I've had great sub-editors over the years that I've been able to talk to. I say because, it's not an easy thing.
Well, again, questions come from answers, which is always a great thing, because you had me thinking with the cookbook, because you were talking about narrative stuff, and then we've got the cookbook. You've also, explained a lot of why what you do. So this is why I hear it. A lot of what you've done has been successful. It's because you have a sort of good eye or feel for everything. So with the cookbook, are you responsible for, or you get final word on stuff like the visual side of things, or are you working with people really experienced with publishing, and do you trust their word? In other words, you're trying to get something to look as sexy as the recipes are, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the first book, I had no idea how the process worked.
Yeah, right? Well, I wouldn't, and that's right.
Yeah. So I was just like, here's my recipes, these are the photographs.
Yeah.
The designers go off and do it. They come back and they go, here's the design. What do you think? You go, I
get it. You're giving them the Edmonds cookbook to begin with. It's just like
exactly. You go,
step 1, step 2, 3 of these, 2 of those.
Here's the photograph that matches this recipe. That's the format, whatever. Anyway, and it came out. I was like, I'm not so sure about this. I should have said this and I should have done that and I should have had more control over it. So the second book, the big book, got really involved, right? And we had the same designers, but I said, this is different. And in all the meetings we'd have, with the designers of that book, they'd have other cookbooks and things in front. They'd look at the latest books from overseas.
That's not the way to go. That's not the way to go. Yeah.
And that was it. And then in the end, actually, it was Jane Usher, who was the photographer that was working. She was at those meetings as well. And she said, for fuck's sake, she said, stop looking at cookbooks and go and look at the car books. Right, and go and look at the books about Ferraris, the books about Porsches. Right, that's what this book is. This is about the Ferrari of food. This is not someone else doing like a Delia Smith or an else doing that kind of thing. Start thinking architecture. Start like this for this food. Like when we did the photography, we started out by initially saying, how do we want to prop the food? What plates are we going to use? Now, and I said, what's always annoyed me about that sort of stuff is that the plate and the prop becomes as much of the story about the food as the food, in some cases bigger than the food story. You're looking at this amazing setting of like a leg of ham in a basket with some hay and a fucking field and some pigs behind it, or these amazing plates that are handmade by Spain's most famous potter that no one could ever possibly use and that's why that dish looks so good, right? So we decided we would just, and the way that we'd done with my food anyway, and how the philosophy about my food at the restaurant at the time was, we stripped all that away. I said, no plates, no cutlery, no salt and pepper shakers, no glasses of wine in the background, no scrunched up napkin to the side, nothing. We got plastic, we got white plastic, and we just put that up gave it a curve so you didn't get any shadows at the back. And we plated all that food onto a piece of white plastic.
Yeah.
Wipeable that was down, right? And that was it. So it just became about the food and nothing else, like the dish. All the other stuff was just stripped away. There was no techniques, there was no smoke and mirrors again. It was just like this. We're being really honest here. I'm being really transparent. This is my food. That's it. Warts and all, bare bones. Here you go.
Yeah,
I'm not going to put it onto amazing plate that people go, oh my God, like that looks incredible because it's been suspended from some coat hanger.
There's lots to it, yeah, and like, because just recently, I don't know where I heard this, because I found the whole cult of chef thing really interesting, and I'm really into food and cooking, but someone was talking about how the clever thing with Jamie Oliver's team or whatever, what they worked out is basically, some of those recipes are a roast chicken, but it's making like a man feel like he can chuck it. I know, I'm not. This is no shade on Jamie Oliver at all. It's actually, it's actually a compliment. It's actually a compliment. Like he actually drew people into the kitchen, but it worked. It was like, how do we make this a thing that's appealing to people, and it worked because they kind of knew what that was and what lane they're in,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I give you a recipe that's got a list of ingredients like this, you've got to ingredient number 4 and gone, fuck that.
Yeah.
Like I just want to. But if I give you a recipe for roast chicken that goes chicken, salt, butter, lemon.
But to his point, the whole thing is it's going to end up a really freaking nice roast chicken.
Totally.
Because the man knows what he's doing, and that's the whole point. Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you that don't do it how you've always done it. This is how you roast a chicken, right? And you go, oh, that was amazing, And you go, and it becomes accessible to people, right?
Yeah.
Food, people said to me,
I really like him. I like what he's done over the years, that guy. Yeah.
And as you said, he got people into the kitchen.
Yeah.
Who thought they could never cook.
Yeah.
He got a generation of young people into the kitchen because his food and his books were accessible to young guys, especially males, right?
Yeah.
13, 14, going, there's a guy who looks like me, who kind of, has got this sort of cheeky attitude, like his food shows were different. And he resonated with people, right? So we had young people coming through going, all wanting to be Jamie Oliver.
Yeah.
You
see it, you must see it come through in faces. I wanted to talk on this because it came up really early last week when you were talking about how when you first started in the trade, chefs, this is your words, were the lowest of the low. Like, when did you start feeling? When did you start feeling and noticing the cult of the chef affecting you and what you were doing? It's a kind of late 90s, early 2000s thing internationally, right? That's a total guess with the date as to when I felt like it started happening.
I think it must have been for me mid 80s.
Oh, really? That early?
No. Just trying to think, when did Flip open?
No, but hang on. Mid-'80s was when you
87.
said... Oh, anyway. Oh, no, yeah, it happened for you. Yeah. No, I meant there being a sort of media machine around it, like you being asked on TV and this, that and the other, like...
Yeah, so I think... So when I was... So about 85, 86...
Yeah.
I won... I was 20 years old. I won The Listener, weirdly, ironically, The Listeners and Montana Wines. Very first New Zealand Restaurant of the Year competition. And I was at the restaurant called The Grain of Salt on Orrington Parade.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
And there'd been no competitions before, so the listener put us up. So suddenly there was media around a chef, right? So now I was doing Fernleaf butter commercials, both print and media, print and TV. And I was standing in a fucking stupid tall chef's hat with a bit of fish on a plate with some sort of,
so it hadn't quite happened yet like it does now. Yeah, it wasn't yet.
But it was starting, right?
Yeah.
So suddenly, so there I am at 20, with people taking my photograph in a restaurant holding a plate of food. No one had done that before. Des Britton was on TV and whatever, doing his thing, but there hadn't been this. There's a young chef, right? People started to talk about food, but we're looking at it differently in our restaurants. The conversation around food was starting. Like I said, and I just happened to be, as that wave was starting to crest, I was there.
Nothing wrong with timing, man.
As the wave was building, I was there, and that kind of followed me through into my first restaurant, and then we did Flip was when that wave was really starting to peak, right?
Yeah.
And again, it was right place, right time, and we opened Flip, as we've talked about that already, like how massive that was and what was happening in food, and people like going, give me, get to talk about it. Man, I was putting a tomato on a plate with some bocconcini cheese or mozzarella, if we talked about that, and people were writing about it.
Yeah.
And I was reading Waverley Roots Food of Italy, and I went, oh, tomato and mozzarella cheese with olive oil. Oh, that sounds all right. I could do that.
There's a name for that salad. It slips my mind. Sometimes with a bit of balsamic. Yeah.
Yeah, salad caprese.
But it would have been later on that people start walking in, like, potential staff start walking into your restaurants, and you go, oh, he wants to be Jamie Oliver. He wants to be Gordon Ramsay. So he actually started. They would have started noticing that happening like the mid 2000s or something. Or since reality TV and stuff, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
We see behind the curtain more. Yeah.
And people started talking about it more, and food became more of a, became more of a thing, more of a thing we were doing. We were getting into our kitchens and cooking a little bit more at home. So we were having those conversations. People, suddenly we were doing cooking classes.
Yeah.
And people were coming up. I'm like, who's going to come to a cooking class? How does that work? What I do is really weird. And people, it's quite simple, but people come along. And,
you're doing cooking classes?
Yeah, you take a cooking class. You do a demonstration, a cooking demonstration.
Oh, you can do it on YouTube. You can do it on YouTube these days with a subscription.
That's right. Yeah, exactly right. But you do. But it was always weird stuff as well. You go, I'm going to show you my poached fish with horseradish panna cotta, whatever. I don't know, making that up. But anyway, whatever. And as part of that process, I chop an onion, right? And people would go, could you do that again? I'm like, what? They go, could you just show us how to chop the onion again? Forget how to poach the fish or make the panna cotta.
I want to know how to chop an onion properly. I get it, man. I get it.
I want to know. Yeah. I want to know how, like, what. And that would start a discussion about. So, what knives should I have in my kitchen? What pot? What I remember like doing a cooking class at Ruth Pretty's years ago now, and I used a wooden chopping board. She had the wooden chopping boards out there, and they had the kitchen shop off to the side there. And a woman said, I've noticed that you're using a wooden chopping board. Do you prefer wood chopping boards over the polyethylene ones? I went, wood every time. Like, I went to think about wooden chopping boards. At morning tea, 40 women got up, went into Ruth Pretty's shop, and they all bought wooden chopping boards.
Wow. Well, listen, hey. All purpose, one man at home. I'm a bit of a convert to the bamboo cooking board.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Hardy, lasts well.
But I've got 2 wooden chopping boards in my kitchen I've had for 30 years.
Yeah.
They're the big wooden ones,
What did you end up doing to find yourself in Greytown?
Circumstance, really, Lewis. It was I couldn't afford to live in Wellington. I couldn't afford to buy a house in Wellington. And so I'd lost everything when I lost the restaurant. So I was renting in Mount Cook.
Yeah.
And I'd wanted to buy the little house in Mount Cook. And I put an offer in on it. And it went for $100,000 more than my offer. And it was when all that stuff was going crazy. I was looking to buy a house when houses were going up by $10,000 every week. And for 9 months I kept looking, and I just couldn't keep up. So as a single guy,
well, it's just an abstraction at that point. It's just an abstraction. The whole process.
It was just insane. I'd turn up for open homes, and there'd be 40 pairs of shoes outside the front door, and I'm like going, why am I even here? Hated it, And also there I was, sort of, in my 50s, looking to buy a home.
Yeah.
Right? And people always assumed I was looking to buy the house for my daughter. I'm like going, actually, this is for me. They're like, oh, you're buying, oh. Like, so it was kind of like, I felt like a bit of a loser, like going, like, just like, God. It was kind of, there was a degree of humiliation about this, Anyway, then, so the house the flat was sold. We were staying with a friend, and Isabella said to me one day, she said, it was meant to be for a month, and 9 months later, I'm still looking for a place for us to live. And she said, I don't think you're looking hard enough. She said, we're both really unsettled. We're both really unhappy with the situation. She said, we had this huge argument about it. And I said, of course, I'm doing everything I can, And she said, well, maybe you should stop looking in Wellington and start looking further afield or something. She's the voice of reason in the early 20s.
Yeah, it's amazing that you guys...
It was just crazy. Yeah. In fact, she wasn't even 20, I don't think it is. Maybe she was 21.
Yeah.
18. I can't remember. Anyway. And so it was just after Christmas, early January, and someone sent me a photograph of this little place in Greytown and said, "You may have a look at this." And I was like, "Oh God, Greytown, really? Wairarapa, not really." But I'd already started looking, in Upper Hutt and Tawa. I was getting.
No, you need to be in Greytown. That's the that's so those two in terms of food and yeah,
exactly.
In terms of it, yeah.
So the further out of Wellington CBD from where I'd been living, the more despondent I was getting. It was like, God, really, I might be living out here in this cold, in this, gastronomic wasteland. Like, this is not going to work for me at all. I was getting more depressed anyway. So I rang the agent for this house, and she said, "Look, come over and I'll show you a couple of places on a Friday." And I remember it was a Friday because what happened later on, and it was so I left Wellington. I said it was like January the 4th or something like that. So it was really early January. And I arrived in Greytown outside the little cottage, and the agent got out of her car, and she was wearing a sundress, and she had sunnies on, and her hair was tied back, and she had sandals on her feet. And I got out of the Hilux, and I was wearing a puffer jacket and a jersey and jeans. And she's like, "Where have you come from?" And I said, "Wellington." It was one of those classic, like, miserable Wellington summer days where you go, "God, it's shit here." And an hour away over the hill,
microclimate.
It was 28 degrees and beautiful sunshine. She showed me 4 or 5 houses. By 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we're sitting outside the White Swan drinking Chardonnay and going, "I think I want to live here."
Great.
She said, "Welcome to your new home." The first thing she said to me, I was like, "Oh, that feels good," as opposed to every other real estate agent who just said, "What's your budget?" She just came at it from a different point of view, and I thought, "Oh, I quite like that."
Yeah.
And so by the time I got driven back to Wellington, I put an offer in on this place, and we moved in 2 weeks later.
And when did you get the keys? What year?
Coming up to 5 years ago now.
Yeah.
5 years ago in February.
And so your daughter would still live. She'd be out on her own, doing her own thing now, right?
She is now, but she moved over with me. She was here for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And she went from being a real city kid.
Well, that was exactly I was thinking, like, that's a big call for a teenager, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. She was, night clubbing, dress wearing, makeup wearing, out there. Don't need my driver's license, Dad. Catches the bus, catches the unit, all that sort of stuff. And then we move over to Wairarapa, and she gets a job doing working cellar door in Martinborough.
Yeah.
And suddenly she goes, "Oh," so she gets a driver's license. Changes from being this city kid to now wearing dresses to wearing dungarees and T-shirts and whatever.
Yeah.
And goes, "I don't think I want to be." She was doing anthropology and international relations and marketing at university. And she goes, "I want to work in a vineyard."
Great.
And so now she lives in Hawke's Bay. She's doing viticulture with Ron McDonald and Hawke's Bay Wines, and she's super happy. Got a driver's license, lives in Hamawana with her partner, and it worked out really well for her too.
And have you it sounds like you've kind of learnt, it's just getting older, and it's just like and being able to reflect and all of that. But unlike when you got to Australia, you suddenly end up with 10 things going there, I'd imagine. You just sort of like enjoyed being out of Wellington for a while, and what has come of living there? You're running for council now, but I mean it's been 5 years.
Yeah.
I know, knowing you, there is some other projects, that have.
No, it's actually not. It's just like I think after having the accident as well, like I was just lying there for months later, it was just I just realised I needed to simplify my life, and get rid of the tattoo on my head that said "Just ask me, I say yes."
That's interesting. And,
and just go, and go. Actually, what's important to me?
Yeah.
And going, I was great at satisfying, what other people wanted.
Yeah.
The number of times I was, mate, I remember, I never had a significant. My birthday is January the 29th, right? I never celebrated my birthday for years because I was always working. I was always doing somebody's wedding. I mean, my 40th birthday, I did a wedding that 80 strangers sang me happy birthday, because the bride got them all to sing me happy birthday because she knew it was my birthday. And they all thought it was wonderful. And I thought it was probably the saddest day of my fucking life. And I was like,
oh my God.
And then I was catering other people's 40th birthday.
Yeah.
And there I was like pumping out food for 80 strangers on my 40th.
Yeah.
So I was like, actually, I hadn't celebrated those sort of milestones, those personal milestones like that. It was like, just started to go, well, what's actually important? What's real? Like, what feels good to me? Just focus on those, on those things. Does it feel good? Like I want to do it. So now I've just got rid of a lot of the stuff that I used to do because I felt like I needed to do it or should do it, and go, well, I want to do that. That feels good to do that. Both if it's a community-based activity, it's going to raise money for a charity or whatever it might be. I go, that's important to me that I give back.
But also, when you lower the stakes and you lower the projects, you lower the pressure hugely signically. So it probably helps when you don't have 10,000 bills coming in every 10 minutes because just everything's turning over at a rate of knots, right?
So exactly. So when I first moved here, I was driving into Greytown. I was driving into Wellington like every day, going to work, going to whatever.
And
then over the years I've gone
the adjustment phase.
Adjustment. I go to Wellington twice a week now. There is I work from home here in Greytown. Or I get out on the road and I go and see, or I can go and see the people I need to see around the country. It's easy to do, but then I come back home. Home's become really important to me. It's become, for a while there after I had the accident, it was my compound, right? It was my safety zone, my safety net. In fact, I didn't want to leave the gate. I didn't want to leave the house because it was scary out there. But I enjoy it, I enjoy my environment and I enjoy my surrounds and I enjoy, say the activities that I'm doing now, like that sounds like it could be a good one to do. Not because it's financially rewarding. It might, it might be, it might not be, but it's also I've got time to do that.
And so you've been there a few years. This period of change you're talking about, and then probably a couple of years ago, the way I'd frame it to start with is you're doing some home maintenance, and the universe tells you, "Hey, you're not 21 anymore."
Yeah, it wasn't so. The universe told me I'm not 21 anymore. The universe told me I needed to slow the fuck down.
Oh, so you were still... I thought we'd already got to the slow down phase. Okay, so you still hadn't learned that lesson.
No.
Right.
I was still pumping through. Yeah, so when I bought the house, I inherited this old aluminium ladder that was just outside behind this little studio in the garden that my mother stays in sometimes. Anyway, it's an old aluminium ladder that was there. And it was summer. It was a Saturday afternoon. And weirdly, I was reflecting on the fact that ordinarily that day I would be getting the restaurant ready for Valentine's Day. It was February the 14th. And I would be getting, and I'd be thinking I would have put all the, I was going through in my head all the effort that I would have been going to make the restaurant the world's most romantic environment possible for couples. Again, I never celebrated Valentine's Day myself with my now ex-wife because I was always doing it for other people, She was lucky if she got a card, but for other people, I was giving them roses and champagne. It's pretty strange. Anyway, and I was just trimming. I've got this hornbeam hedge that goes around the property, and I was just on this ladder trimming the top of the hedge. And it's funny, right, when I think back on it, that when I got the ladder out, my next door neighbour, she looked at the ladder and she said, "Are you going to be okay on that?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll be fine." And she said, "You sure you don't want me to come over and I can hold the ladder for you?" And I said, No, it's I'll be absolutely fine. And I got the ladder out and I started using it. And I got on the ladder and I stood and I went, Jesus, this thing is old as, it's really rickety. I probably shouldn't be using this. It's okay. After this job, I'll take this to the tip. I've got a new ladder in Wellington in my lockup. I'll bring that home next week. Going around the garden, I've only got like 10 or so metres left to go at the top of this hedge, and I'm only on the third step up. I'm not very high on this aluminium ladder, and I start to hear the metal creaking. And I'm thinking, fuck, I need to get off this. This is not gonna last. And at that very moment, the ladder gave way, and basically the metal perished on the bottom feet. Excuse me. And I had the safety straps in, but they popped out, and the ladder pancaked down pancaked right out. Well, I was still standing on it, and as it came down, I then landed on my ass, but my left leg was entangled in the wreckage of the ladder. And at first, I thought I'd sprained my ankle because I could feel this pain in my ankle. I thought, shit, I probably need to call an ambulance. This feels like it's quite bad. And I tried to stand up, and I couldn't stand up. I couldn't figure out why I couldn't stand up. I realised because I was twisted in the wreckage of this ladder.
Jeez.
So I tried to crawl out of it. I tried to crawl away from the ladder, and again, nothing was kind of working. So I turned around, I sat back on my ass. I had a good look at it, and all I was wearing was a baseball cap, a pair of old rugby shorts. My phone was inside, and a pair of leather work boots.
The phone was inside. I was thinking about that.
Phone was inside the house, and I was home. Alone.
Yeah.
And so I thought I need to get inside to call the ambulance to get to my phone.
Yeah.
And then I looked at my leg, and I was like, shit, are those my bones?
Oh man.
And I had all these compound fractures of the left leg, of the fibula of the tibia, and then I looked at my foot, and blood was just, this is quite gruesome, but there was blood just pouring out of the boot.
Wow.
And again, I had a good look at it, and I realised my foot was hanging off.
Oh, man.
So while my leg was tangled, broken in multiple places over the upright of the ladder, the step itself had acted as a guillotine and just descended right through the foot.
Man.
And because it's not a sharp edge, it's a blunt edge, and it just basically smashed its way through the foot.
Oh,
so
boy.
It hadn't cut it; it just smashed its way right through. And basically, but for the fact I was wearing this pair of old Doc Martens, would have gone right the way through. And I just cut the foot right off. And
yeah, because otherwise it sounds like you learnt a bit about safety clothing. Sorry. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. So I sat back and I was like, fuck, what do I do? I was like, this is bad. The weird thing as well at this stage, right, no pain. Right,
that's because there's so much of what the body shoots into you. Yeah.
And I just think something in your brain just goes, it's something in your brain goes,
it's just got to fight it, yeah.
This is too much to handle.
Yeah.
We're just going to shut it down.
Yeah.
Right? And just shuts down all those pain receptors at that point, sends an adrenaline like you wouldn't believe. I don't know what the physiology of it is, mate, but I'm just going.
I'm just like, I'm backing with you, and so that gives you your mental faculties to try and have a bit of time to figure out.
I guess you're right.
Figure out what how you're going to work this out. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I've never thought about that before. I never thought of it like that before, but you're right. And so I yelled for help. And my neighbour, who'd offered to help with the ladder, stuck her head through her head.
Bless her.
And she said, what's wrong? And I said, I think I've broken my leg. Can you call an ambulance? So she said, oh, my God. So she ran inside and called an ambulance. But my other neighbours on the other side of me, their kids heard me calling for help, and their dad is a volunteer in the fire brigade here. He's a co-responder.
Greytown.
They ran and got
community.
Greytown, right?
Yeah.
And they ran and got mum and said, the man next door's calling for help. So she came racing over going, what's going on? I said, don't come in. I said, it's really bad, but I've had an accident. She got the husband. He came over. Ambulance was on its way, and he went inside, got a hold of tea towels and formed those little rings that they do and put those around. Yeah. Around. He put those around the compound fractures and stemmed the bleeding. And when the ambulance guys were talking to me later on, they said, you owe him your life.
Wow, right.
And he's probably saved your foot as well.
Far out. Wow. Likely. Jesus.
And but for the swift actions of a neighbour, right? Yeah.
Who was trained? Who was trained?
It was just he'd done his first day training that week.
Wow.
So what followed was 18 months of rehab, of recovery and rehab. And mate, I'd never even sprained a finger before.
No.
You know, before this accident, I'd had some serious cuts and some very serious burns, but I'd never had anything quite like this. So I ended up in hospital for nearly 3 weeks with multiple operations, rods, pins, bridges, metalware.
Yeah.
On three different occasions, they were going to amputate the leg below the knee because of for various reasons, which is a really confronting thing to face.
Oh, absolutely.
And then then I came home. Of course, I had to have home help and home care and people coming in and looking out like district nurses every day and home help. And,
how good is it living? How good is it living in a country with our health system? Imagine if that had happened to you in the US.
Lewis would be buggered.
Yeah,
there's no way I could do it. Like I mean, I was within two. So my accident happened on a Saturday. On the Tuesday, while I was in hospital, ACC rang and said, "Right, what's going? Well, we've had a notification. These are the things. Here's your client code. Here's your number, customer number. When you get out, call us." It was amazing.
Yeah.
Right. And they sent builders around here. So not builders. They sent an assessor around here in my place to see if my kitchen needed modifying, what help I needed to get my bathroom sorted out. They were going to put a ramp in for me to get down the stairs. Like all these things. They said, "This is what we will do to aid in your recovery."
And I know this is your story, but I just because I went through first time. I've been close to someone who had cancer. Like my grandmother died earlier this year. It was very sudden, but as part of that, wondering about it, in terms of the wonderment I felt about our health system. There are all these people who turn up at people's houses in the afternoon, and their job, their egoless job, the way I see it, is to serve and help people as part of our public health system. So all the people, like, it's totally analogous, even though your thing was physical, like, well, it's mental as well. But I really, really, really learnt what our hospice care system is about. I didn't really understand it because I didn't really need to, So
and it's available to everybody, right?
Yeah,
That's the other thing. Like, you don't have to be. It's
not means tested.
It's not means tested. We can all access this. Like it's there for all of us.
Yeah.
I've still got the exercise bike here that they gave me because one day I said I was worried about the amount of weight I was putting on.
Yeah.
And because I wasn't able to exercise normally, they said we'll send you an exercise bike. I said, when do you want it back? They said, let us know when you're done with it.
Yeah.
Right. The occupational therapist that came to my house every week, the physio that came to my house every week, the they worked out that because of the PTSD, I was given a counsellor to assess me to begin with. Then I had monthly counselling, which I've still got now, weekly counselling.
Well, also on the mental health side of things, even though it's a physical therapist turning up, it's someone coming to your house and going, "Hey, don't mook around today. You got to this, that, and the other thing."
When someone said to me early on, the physio said, "Right, you'll need to learn how to walk again." You think learning how to walk again is a physical thing, right? You're going to get up, like your physiotherapist's helping you to walk again. And then you realise actually learning how to walk again is a mental thing. Like there's a lot of mental things, and it's not just like, this is how I put my foot in front of the other, but it's the mental, because you don't trust yourself anymore. There's all these environmental things that go on around you. So what I've learned is now that when someone's had an injury, asking them how they are is not so much about how's your arm feeling or how's your leg feeling, whatever. It's how you're doing up here.
Yeah.
Because the mental battle is greater than the physical battle. Because I tell you, man, I went to some fucking dark places over those months. And I said before,
but you'd already given up drinking, right? You'd already given up drinking, hadn't you?
I'd given up drinking.
I think that's probably good timing, man.
But if anything's going to make you is drive you to drink again, it's lying in bed going, the morphine's not touching the side.
Oh my God, yeah.
But if I had a whiskey on top of the morphine, I'd be able to sleep right now.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the that's the battle of the alcoholic, right? Is that they've always got that part of your brain going, well, just one isn't going to hurt, and you can start, and you can just, no one needs to know, and you can just don't have one tomorrow, because that's the fucking evil part of the alcohol going, oh, this is how we're going to get you back, mate.
Yeah.
Get you back on the week. We're going to get you back drinking, mate. We'll start you out with one whiskey tonight, and we'll have two tomorrow night. So you fight in that struggle, going, oh God, a drink would help right now, but I'm not going to do that. Equally, I'm lying here in pain, going, man, this really hurts. Like this is. So the mental struggle is enormous, and I just think, we do need to talk about that more. especially as men, because as kids, it's like get a band-aid on your grazed knee and told to get back out there and play again and stop crying.
Although there can be value in that.
It's the whole Monty Python sketch. It's just a flesh wound. Come back and fight, you prick.
We've got in about 10 minutes. My students are going to be wondering where I am. I live about 30 seconds from work, but that's good because it sounds like you and I could end up doing this podcast. It was 40 hours, but.
No, we should
because that year is really, really significant because I figured out earlier on that because I read an article, you must have met Nick around the time you had to start going into that office rather than being at your restaurant every day, right? Because you said something about when you moved in underneath him.
Yeah, no, so Nick moved in after I'd been there for a few years.
Right.
And so I knew of Nick, I'd met him sort of socially a couple of times, but I always thought he was a real dickhead. So he just was like, just to frame this for the listeners, just to the reveal. Martin's best friend Nick, and Nick, who I've known for many, many years, took his own life later that year. And by the way, I really liked on RNZ how you kind of talked about suicide in a very literal way. Like I think part of the problem with when people kill themselves is people don't use these terms and they don't say this happened and that happened. And so I found that really helpful. But so this is the thing, we need to backtrack to like when you met him because you didn't realise you were going to have a best friend at this stage in your life, right? So so I'll leave you back with I didn't really like him. I thought he was a dick. He's been a clown, really. Just always seemed to be. He was just like a real larrikin. I was like, just what is with this guy? Anyway, so I'd been in the office on Orchard Parade for several years, and then and we had this flat above us, which seemed to be having like a revolving door of tenants going through it. And then one day Nick moved in, and boy did my life change when Nick moved in. And
good for your alcoholism.
Yeah, well,
sorry. Anyway,
he was one of the triggers. Yeah. When I gave up, I said to Nick, I said, I'm giving up alcohol. The beautiful thing about Nick was he didn't go, don't be stupid, or why is that, or well, what am I going to do then? Nick was like, that's cool. What can I do to help?
That's great, because then that's the thing.
He was just like, and he was like, I can still drink my way.
That's right, because the in-joke there, everyone, was he was a lush. I went to, once in Wellington, I went to pop in to see him for like, what was going to be 20 minutes at the cafe in the afternoon, and it makes sense that I have a coffee with him, and that's what you do at that time of the day. And I end up going back up to the bus stop, steamed, going, how did we end up drinking 2 bottles of red out of coffee cups?
Coffee cups. Yeah.
So now I do know Nick.
You do know Nick. And we've got very similar stories.
Yeah.
And I just, one of the things I realised with Nick's death was that, I'd waited nearly 50 years to find a best mate.
Yeah.
I didn't realise I was missing from my life until Nick came along. And we just became, this guy I thought was a real dick. And he could still have real dick moments. Like, he and I would still fight and argue because he'd make some real dick moves every now and again. But it was impossible to hate. It was impossible to be pissed off at.
Yeah.
Because he'd come in and go, oh, honey, give me, I'm like, fucking don't you honey me, and he'd go, buddy, come on, give me a hug. I'm like, no, go away, you're reading.
No, you're right, that stuff with him is hard to read. Yeah.
But he was just like, and he go, and he go, okay, fine, and you move on, and because Nick was just like, I don't want to have the argument, like, I'm sorry, let's just keep going, and I really miss you, man, and I go, yeah, I miss you too, mate, so you move on and you move forward, and anyway, but I'd say to him, we're never doing that again, though, right? That was a stupid thing. We are not doing. We agreed. We won't do that again, But he was so incredibly generous to his friends. Like he would
to a fault.
To a fault, man. Like he would give you. If you were cold, he wouldn't give you the shirt off his back. He'd give you his singlet as well.
Yeah.
Because he was so incredibly generous. I'm
interested in it going from, you kind of hanging out, you kind of, I quite like this guy, you're chatting a bit more, but you guys got to the point, I made an impression on me when I read it, because just even this act of calling someone these days is unusual. You got to a point where one of you would phone each other at least once a day, right?
Oh, we'd talk every morning about it, we'd call each other every morning.
And is it like, are you getting to like sort of like more, not deep and meaningful stuff, but
there was definitely elements of that, but also it was also like, oh my God, whatever, I can't even remember what the fuck happened last night.
Yeah, that sounds more like it.
For the next one, and I go, what happened last night? He go, Taco Tuesday. I'm like, oh, okay. And I go, and how was it? It was, that's how we start Wednesday, talk about Taco Tuesday.
Yeah.
That he would have had upstairs in his flat. Like, when Tuesday night I said to him, what are you going to do tonight? He goes, oh, nothing. I'm just going to sit here and watch Seinfeld. But something would have happened between me hanging up the phone and Wednesday morning that suddenly Taco Tuesday happened, and 8 people came around and had tacos, and he woke up with a glass of red wine all over him.
Yeah.
He was still holding the glass, but the wine was, and so we would talk all the time, but he was having problems. He was having some serious money worries. So often it would start out with I'd started drawing lists up for him of things that he needed to do each day. Right, okay.
And this is after you'd gone through this, right? After you'd gone,
totally. So I knew it's like, and we got down to the point of going, I'm going to call this person for you, and they're going to call you, right? In terms of you're going to call your accountant, because he'd started to catastrophize how bad his situation was. I was like, it's not that bad. With some hard work and 3 years of grind, we'll get you out of this. People around him were helping. My accountant was trying to help him. And go, like, Nick, we could do. And then she said, he doesn't want to help himself. I can't work with him. Like, everything I've tried to do, get him to come back to me when he's ready to do this. So the phone calls were like, what's today looking like? And also, how are you mentally feeling, right? Because he was saying, I just don't feel good today. He'd been in Auckland for a while, and he came back to Wellington, kind of with his tail between his legs. And I couldn't figure out what had happened. And he said, I said, why did you leave Auckland so quickly? Oh, no, I just had to get out of there. Just, I need to get the business sorted out and do whatever. I'm like, that's just not you. This isn't you talking. Like, what happened in Auckland that you suddenly had to leave? And it was because he pissed a few people off and burned a few bridges, and he had to get out of town again. And, he had a bit of money here and there, and all of a sudden he had to leave Waiheke and leave Auckland. And because I was saying to him, go back to Auckland, forget Wellington, close up.
Oh, my God. Was this just before lockdown?
No, this was things had happened before lockdown as well. But then,
he rang me out of the blue one night and really needed someone to stay with in Auckland. It was just before lockdown, and I wondered. Look, anyway, aside, keep going.
No, that's right. Yeah, Nick frequently had nowhere to stay.
Yeah,
Nick rang me one morning, and I said, "Where are you?" There's an echo on the phone, and he was in the toilets at the ferry terminal because Jeff from Shakra Brothers had given him the toilet code one day, which he put into his phone.
Wow.
And he missed the last ferry to Waiheke. He had nowhere to sleep. So when everybody had gone and it was all closed up, he went and used the code and he slept in the toilet.
Yeah.
I was like, what are you doing? Like, fuck. You're in your 40s, mate, sleeping on the floor of the toilet at the ferry terminal. Like, there's no pride in this. Like, this is get your shit together, man,
Yeah.
So there's those sort of conversations. But also we'd laugh, right? And on that Tuesday that he killed himself, we ended up laughing. We finished off laughing, and he said, I'll call you later on this afternoon. Which is why sometimes I think, was it an accident? Or was it just like, was he saying goodbye, but he didn't want you to worry? Like, like that's the bit you go around in your head, that final conversation. And a couple of hours later, Nick was dead.
Yeah.
He'd killed himself. But equally, I found out as well that he rang 3 or 4 other people that morning, and they said it was unusual for Nick to ring them in the morning, and they wondered why. Close family members.
Yes.
They said Nick rang and they had a chat. So it was, and I was angry for a while there, Lewis. It was just I was fucking hated him for what he'd done, but now
that's a reasonable way to feel.
Yeah.
We just stopped now, and I'm just glad you told me. I mean, it's a huge loss, and you start to speak in cliches at this point, don't you? And it was made.
Cliches.
Yeah, and as I say, like Nick and I. So really, really quickly, Nick and I, because Nick's very easy to meet in general, but the particular way that I think Nick and I actually knew each other, and I've just thought about this now, is that when we were kids, which you don't think you were kids at the time, but we call them kids now, when we were 17, 18, we both had a great part-time job for someone that age. We were both hotel porters at the airport hotel in Kilburnie. And he was kind of, and we were sort of both, like I was just got into DJing, and he obviously liked going out and having a good time. Yeah, and that dance scene was popping off. So he had a car, someone in Wellington with a car. I think he actually came with me and picked up my first DJ gear. So what I'm getting at is, I just realized as I'm saying it, I'm like, well, I didn't really, I didn't phone Nick every 6 months for 20 years, but you don't with people you know like that. But, you know, we had a long-standing relationship, and the last thing that happened was that, and I just supposed all of this, I didn't really ask, I felt like the first time that lockdown hit, Martin, we were drummed into us that there was this, you know, we were all going to die of the lurg, and you just don't have anyone come inside your bubble. But Nick phoned me, and he's never phoned me in Auckland before about staying somewhere, and said, can I stay somewhere tonight? And I thought, wow, this guy doesn't have somewhere to stay in lockdown. No, he's probably come off Waikiki and stuff. And it comes back to Nick's, might be a nice place to end. It comes back to Nick's, you know, generosity to a fault. I just remembered when I went to Wellington for a gig, and he let me stay at his place in Oriental Bay, but then he brought the most expensive steaks, and he did this and he did that, and then he drove me to the airport in the morning when no one expects that, nor should you do that after, you know, it's easy when they catch the thing there. And I was like, I am breaking the law, whatever, blah, 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 blah. It's against common sense, you know, but this man needs to stay at my house before lockdown. That's the last time I saw him.
Good on you for doing that.
So it's ended up, yeah.
Well, I think, as I said, I think what I said in his obituary, that
his poor daughter. I mean, God.
You know, people said, you know, that he and I were really close, and we were.
Yeah.
But the truth is that Nick was close to hundreds of people.
No, he wasn't supporting. Anyway,
he was just lots of people knew Nick because he was that kind of affable, generous. I mean, I
love the line. He'd turn up to an envelope opening. Said earlier on,
totally.
Hey, listen, it's 10 o'clock, Martin. This has been fantastic. And what I'd like to do is, I'll give you a call sometime and just chat to you a bit more about Nick and stuff. You know, kind of off mic, as you say. Yeah. But it's been a pleasure, mate. And I think you'll enjoy this when it comes out. Okay, I've got to go to work. Okay, take care.
I really enjoyed it. Thanks, love.
Bye bye. See ya. Bye bye.